Well, that started well. Okay, let us see here. Gotta go back to this. Drag that over here out of the way. And deal with that in a moment. What time was that? Oh, Friday. Yeah, we were a little at the end of the world. Okay, what do we got? Just gotta let people know that we're actually already live, which is a different setup at this point, but what the heck? Are we being, yeah, we should be being heard. Anyway, head for home. Oh, look at that. We've got friend requests. And I'm going live on YouTube at 8 a.m. PST. Okay, and let me do this. Topic. Hopefully this worked right. Oh, that is not what I needed. What do we got here? I wonder. Don't really know at this point. Okay, so we have to go. Delete that because we did not do that right. Uh-oh. We need to go to, I think that should be there. Just trying to figure out because we don't know. Oh, there, wait. Nope, that's 0 to success. Let us go to not video analytics. We want to go channel analytics. That might have it. No, that's not being posted, which makes sense. That figures. I wonder if there's any way of looking at this without actually hanging up on it. What's that? Don't want to get into something that I don't know. That is unfortunate, but what the heck? So, oh, there we go. Good morning, Chad. How are you? Oops. Just getting things sorted around, so figured I'd set it up and run with it. Sure. Brain's not apparently working. Well, hopefully you're doing well. Yeah, and got my coffee here too. That'd be this thing here, but I've got another pot brewing. Tell you, things got really dicey for me just the last couple of days. Somebody managed to get into my email, but Windows Defender stopped them from sending anything. And then when I installed Avast, it just wiped out the whole problem. So that was annoying. What is that? That is not what I'm looking for. Anyway, we were trying to get something posted here. There. And it's a wonderful little mess trying to get things organized when you're still having trouble figuring it out. But hey, we'll see where things go. I got started on my journey. And that should work. Whoop. Let's see if we can get that all copied. Copy that and post. There. That should get some people's attention anyway. We'll see what happens here. Bernadette. Good morning, Bernadette. How you doing? Just getting things organized. So if I seem a little scattered, that has something to do with the monitor I work on. It was right here beside me. That's why you keep seeing the side of my head. And if I don't do this, there we go. I figured I'd get the window open so I can actually bring my temperature back down to normal. Oh yes, something I should make sure I do here. A little scattered, but having to try and upgrade a lot of things all at the same time. Somebody compromised my credit card, and then somebody got into my email. Although, fortunately, my email was not actually compromised, as in nothing could be sent. So they got into it, but I got that sorted out by putting Avast on board. And that just wiped the problem out altogether. What am I looking for here? Oh, of course. Now, this is just for people that don't know me. The ones that do know full well that trying to track all of the information at once just doesn't work that well for me. Whoop. That should help. Apparently, we can't type. Yeah, it was kind of an annoyance, but I have come to the conclusion. I know some people said I shouldn't, but I have come to the conclusion that I'm going to be removing the hair that sits here, because what happens is it gets into my actual ears and just annoys the heck out of them. So I figure if I go and get that tidied off, I'm not removing the sideburns. That's just not going to happen. But I think the most annoying part of the credit card issue is I've had to try and figure out who I had automatic payments going through, not the least of which is Author House, the company that I've got doing my novels. But I've been neglecting a lot of that for the past month, so I got to get a hold of them today and get things moving in the right direction. Where are we here? We want to go to Twitter and just get a couple of things set out so people know what's going on. Whoops. That apparently didn't work well. Hey. Introducing reply downvotes. What the heck is that? Okay, don't need that. I need to go all the way to the top. What the heck did they do here? Oh, okay. What's happening? There we go. Trying to figure technology out is still a royal pain in the neck for me. But, what the heck? Well, that looks like it could be entertaining. Okay, what's happening? Let's go. Paste there. Bingo. See, the way I figure it, I keep getting asked by people how I got into it. I got asked again yesterday about how I come up with the information I've got. So I figured I might just as well cover that today, or at least start there. Any questions that come in, I am still going to be answering them as a priority for the most part. But as we all know, some questions that people ask, I'm just not about to answer. Because to my way of thinking, more often than not, people are asking questions that they don't require answers to. I like the way it was put to me one day by a gentleman. He looks at me and he goes, never, ever, never explain. He goes, never explain anything. He says, your friends don't require explanations and your enemies don't deserve them. Which, from my way of thinking, made total sense. I just have to find a way to be a little more diplomatic, if you will. But that'll be easier once I get the link here. The thing is, what I have discovered is that you cannot control how other people deal with things. All you can do is control how you do, like control what you're doing, and control how you respond to what other people are doing. And that's all you've got to work with. Ultimately, the only thing you've got in life is your word. And for me, that's why I tell people the one thing I won't do is I'm not about to lie to people to make them feel better. The reality is the moment you start doing that, you open the door to all kinds of annoyances. We can see, I like the way this is working. People are starting to come in, and I know this is going to take time. And the fact that I can only handle so much myself as far as it goes, trying to get ahead of the game, trying to track everything going on, is just not one of those things that works well. Dave's got like 3 or 4 chat rooms that he keeps tabs on, and there is not a prayer of my trying to do that just yet. Although I was really happy this morning. Found out a while back I was talking about how my back was completely out, and I figured out what had caused it. What happened is I had quit exercising. Now, let's face it, I am not heavy into thanks, Chad, I appreciate that. I am not into heavy exercise. Okay. But I watch a lot of what's going on, a lot of what people are saying. Right. And my exercise routine boils down to about 5 minutes of exercise in the morning. But the thing I was so happy about this morning is after quitting exercise for about 3 months. Well, hello. Hi. Got a squirrel outside my front door, outside my front window that was showing me his nut. No, I used to, when I did that, I couldn't even bend over and touch my knees. Right. Now, this is in spite of having lost over 40 pounds. But this morning I turned around, I went to do my exercises. I was actually able to take my fingers and curl them that far and touch the floor with them on both hands. Now, I used to, when I was a lot younger, I used to be able to put my hands palm on the floor while wearing platform shoes, while wearing a 2-inch heel. And eventually I may get back to that. It's not a primary goal at this point. I just desire to be actually active. Okay, now I've got those posted where I required them, which means people that are going to find that are looking to find out, at least I'm live and they know it. Now, who are these people? See, I'm looking right now at LinkedIn. I always double check who I'm dealing with, because the reality is that from my standpoint, I take a look at things and go, okay, I've had people that have asked for a friendship from me, and on their main page of whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook or LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter, it doesn't matter. Those are the three I work with. But people tell me, they go, I want to be a friend of you, pop it up, and it's straight into the X-rated stuff. Well, those friendships, I just terminate. I don't even bother starting them. I figure if people desire that sort of thing, they're more than welcome to. That's why I like what they did with Sweden. But, the reality is I've had to figure out where my boundaries were and figure out it really boiled down to one issue. When you're striving to figure out how to fit in this world, don't. Because you're trying for acceptance from a bunch of people that probably won't understand what you're going through. It doesn't matter what you're going through. If you grew up, like I saw a post the other day, and it shows a bunch of teenage kids, teenage or young adult, okay, or young males, okay, and it shows back in the 60s, this was how they spent their weekends. They were sitting there, and they had all these kids huddled around the engine of a car, trying to put a car back together. Now, I know a lot of the people I grew up with had the same idea. I could never wrap my brain around it. But it says, this was in the 60s, right? And then these are the kids today. And same age bracket. Okay. It's the same age bracket. And here they are sitting playing with the PlayStation and that sort of thing. And they can't even change a tire. Chad, the answer to your question, there's a lot of controversy around that. To clear up the interdimensional thing, everything in existence on Earth, okay, in this reality, everything is third dimensional. Now, some things vibrate at a higher rate, which is why you can't see them, okay, because they're moving too fast. But that being said, and it is literally my opinion, Dave and I have gotten into this debate, and we just agreed to disagree. Because from what I've seen, I've met them. I've met them face to face. So rest assured, they are physical. Okay. But in my experience, in my opinion, Bigfoot is Gigantropithecus, aka, I think if I recall my evolution correctly, we're talking about one step prior to Neanderthal. Yes, they disappear in a heartbeat while they're looking at you. Absolutely. The reality is, Chad, and everybody can do this. This is something I've taught a lot of people. I've taught a lot of people how to do. But literally, if you take your hands and you put them just about that far apart, just a 1/4 inch apart, you'll feel a little bit of energy between them. Now, how you describe that is up to you. Okay, I've heard it described a lot of ways. Okay, so, and just give me half a sec, I'll finish that thought, but I should close this door. I'm going to end up getting up to go and get coffee right before 8 o'clock here. But if you feel that, ultimately, yes. Okay. That heat. Okay. If you remember that energy runs both directions. With electricity, if you want it to run two directions, you have to swap the setup or the hookups around. Bioenergy, which is what you're feeling there, runs both directions at the same time. Now, while you're concentrating on that, focus on it and let it get stronger. As you feel it get stronger, let your hands force themselves apart. Okay. Until, as far as you can. Now, when I started working with it, I was only sitting here. At this point, I cannot reach far enough apart to not be able to feel it. Okay. And that same energy is what people use for tracking, for literally your psychics that are working with cards and what have you. Cards are just a focus. But that's the same energy they use for that, for seeing auras, for healing at higher rates. And rest assured, I figured out how to heal at a staggering rate. Something dawned on me the other day, so I've started working on it, but it'll take a while to get it done. The human body is built with a built-in set of blueprints, of perfect blueprints to everything in your body. Okay. Now, in my case, I've got problems with my teeth, and most of them have dissolved. But it finally dawned on me that I don't have to know what the building blocks are. Mankind does not require the knowledge of this. So I'm in the process now of focusing to get my teeth to regenerate themselves. Now, that's going to be an ongoing process. But the way I figure it, the body knew what to do with itself. This is why my left arm now actually works. Okay, because I came to the conclusion that when you realize that the only thing stopping you from being successful, from getting ahead, is your own belief that you're not able to. Now, don't get me wrong. I've come to the conclusion with mechanical work that I'm very mechanically inclined. Every single time I'm inclined, I go to the mechanic, and that seems to work for me. I was just making the comment there about people and guys today cannot do half the work on the vehicles they used to. Okay, I never could, and my father and three of my brothers were very adept mechanics. I'm not one of them, and I never could wrap my brain around it. But the reality is we are all born with access. Thank you so much, Chad. I do appreciate it. The funny part about it is that when you're working with energy, if you believe it's possible, you're in. You can make it happen. But the thing to remember is that it really is a mindset. Okay. One of the things that I found with people is we're taught you can't do that. This is one of the most common things we're told. That you're not able, that you can't do that. It's not possible. Well, I'd have been a year and a half old at the time, and I was sitting at my dining room table, and Dad had put a bowl of pablum on my high chair. Now understand, the table that I sit on, that I've still got it today in my house. It's my dining room table. It was literally built, from what I understand. Now, I was born in 1963. And because there was a table with the kids in the house, the table Mom and Dad had was big enough for the family on the whole. Okay, just wait. And who do we got here? Andy, how you doing? Dad put the pablum down, and I took a look at it. And I just put my hand on the edge of the pablum and moved it sideways. I didn't push it onto the floor. I just moved it out of the way. But the table that I was sitting up next to is 3.5 feet wide and 6 feet long. One piece covered in arborite. And if you're anywhere near my age, you'll have run into arborite and know what it is. Okay. But smooth table, no breaks in it at all. And all I did was I put my hand out like this, and the table, and we're talking about a bowl, rather. We're talking about a bowl that is about that big around, okay, and about that deep, full of mashed potatoes. Well, I took a look at this, and I put my hand out and concentrated for a moment, and the bowl sailed the entire length of the table and landed on my high chair. Didn't spill anything. But, while I'm doing that, I've got one brother, I've got 3 brothers at the time, 2 on one side of the table and 1 on the other. Now, Dad was sitting beside me and Mom standing at the far end of the table. Well, the bowl shot the length. My eldest brother, who was absolutely brilliant, you could watch his mind work as he's going back and forth. And so he's looking back and forth going, how the heck did that work? Now, bear in mind, this particular brother, who frankly has now passed away, is looking at it and he's just going back and forth. Well, he himself later in life got tested he got multiple times tested with an IQ in excess of 180. Second star, how we doing? Pretty quick when things go live, when I get the link in my own inbox, I should be getting it pretty quick here, so that I can actually move the video, the screen over so I can see what's going on. There we are. That'll make it easy. Okay. So, of course, he's doing that. The second brother is just absolutely killing himself laughing. And then the third one is, that's impossible. That's impossible. He's just muttering to himself. So, of course, I turned around and I'm looking at this. And there we go. We now have the screen. Now I can see what you guys are seeing. Whoop. Why are we sluggish? Having troubles with the mouse. Turned around. There. So I turned around, that's going on. And from there on, things got right out of hand. Now, I used to have kind of psychokinetic capacity. At this point, I've forgotten a lot of it. But I think I know what caused the holdup. But, everybody is born with these abilities. Not all the same strength. It's like everybody's born with the ability to comprehend. Like, you can comprehend the different sciences and what have you. But the thing that we've got to remember is that people on the whole, people are born. They are born very open, very loving, very congenial. They are taught greed, fear. They are taught how to abuse people. Okay, and this is something that we have to remember. Okay, this is what's got to start being taught is the other side of that. How to accept people, because the reality is growing up where I did, small town, military base, right in the BC Bible Belt. Okay, and just to make matters worse, I got asked yesterday online what music I listen to. Well, so many people my age listen to your classic rock and that side of thing. Okay, for me, it's always been an issue of listening to country. So, as the song by Barbara Mandrell said, I was country when country wasn't cool. And rest assured, since everybody else was wearing jeans and I was wearing corduroys, this did not help much. So I became very, very, shall we say, unpopular. Except when at 10 years old, people found out what I was actually capable of sensing. But the real catch to getting used to it, people are starting to grow up more, are starting to wake up more and more now. Okay. Hey, great morning, Lawrence. Glad you can make it. Oh, it's just, it is literally, I just drink Folgers on the whole. I do have a can of Maxwell House that was the right price, and I desired one for backup. You know, speaking of which, I should probably go and top up my coffee. It should be ready. So, bear with me, people, and I will be back momentarily. We're empty. Okay, we are back. Don't have the coordination to work with, but we are back. Yeah, and see, the thing is, as far as I'm concerned, I drink either Folgers or Maxwell House. Okay. The reality is, when you take a look at any of these, when you take a look at any of the commercials for coffee, they all say we go to these places and we get the best of the best. And then I ran into Edwards Coffee, and in my eyes, Edwards Coffee gets whatever's left. Edwards is the one coffee that if people offer it to me, even if it's in a house, I will turn Edwards Coffee down. Right. Most I usually do my best to be congenial. If somebody offers me something, I'll work with it. But the other coffee that I don't, because when I make my pot, a normal person, like the average person, will take a 12-cup pot of coffee and then put 3 to 4 tablespoons of coffee into the water, to make their coffee that way. Well, in my case, I turn around, I only use 1 tablespoon of coffee in an entire pot. And according to my nutritionist, all that means is I'm getting all the water I require, and the caffeine that's involved is virtually non-existent. So, but here's the reality when we're talking the higher senses. So many people are picking up. We had an interesting issue last night on Spaced Out Radio. We were talking away, and I saw something go by my shoulder. Okay. And there was somebody else in the room, and I forget who the person was. But somebody else in the room actually spotted it. Right. Because I said, look, this is what I saw. Did anybody? And then Dave asked everybody out there, did anybody else see it? And somebody else said they had seen the movement. Well, in my house, this is just plain normal. Okay. Sometimes you look at it as a trick of the light, but in my world, it's normal for this sort of thing to happen. But as people's senses climb, as they become more and more awake, and it's the reality is, the more people that wake up, the more access other people have, and the more acceptable it becomes. But there are two types of people that are theoretically awake. Well, technically, there's 3 types. You've got the people that talk the talk. They know what to tell you. They know how to make it work. Okay. And this is going to go completely sideways on you. Okay, on everybody. But the reality is, my life is more science fiction than anything else. There are people that talk the talk. Okay, which means they know the language, they know how to tell you things to make it sound like they know what they're doing. Well, funny thing there, Bernadette goes, coffee is life. Now, coffee doesn't necessarily save people's lives. It does make it easier for some people to cope. But what I find with me is it's not so much it makes it easier for me to cope, but it makes it easier for other people to cope with me. Because the coffee itself, I just don't like the flavor of water. Okay, especially not around here. The chlorine content is absolutely insane. But by adding the coffee to it, I don't have that problem. But so many people have learned how to talk about what they're doing. Like, I call myself a spiritual guide for one reason. Every tool I talk about, every tool that I offer people, if it applies to my life, I'm utilizing it. Okay. If it doesn't apply to my life, I've got well in excess of 80,000 clients under my belt right now, where I've gotten a lot of feedback from. One of the primary tools that I've given people is how to actually stop smoking without withdrawals. Okay, now bearing in mind that I never started. Okay, I didn't start smoking, so I'm not about to go out and figure out, and try it and then see if I can break it. Not worth my effort. But with the number of people that I've actually handed that tool to, okay, it's one of those tools that most people that are, especially people selling cigarettes, don't want you knowing about. Okay, there are many things, and I do encourage people, use whatever method you can. If you're not happy with the fact you're smoking, okay, it doesn't matter if the doctor tells you you've got to quit smoking, or it's going to kill you. If you don't get that heartfelt thing here, that real push for you personally, you're not going to stop. Now, when I was growing up, my dad kept telling me, whatever you do, don't tell people what you do. Don't show people what you're capable of. Well, apparently I missed that lesson. Because up until I was 10, everything was quiet. I have memories, and Dad confirmed them all before he on his deathbed, which to me, I kind of take that as an important little sign. That right there, what they call a deathbed confession, usually holds a lot more credence than just somebody saying it while you're alive, which is really odd. I'm a firm believer, if I'm going to tell you something, I'll back it up the same way. As a matter of fact, come to think of it, somebody contacted me and I got to go find their email again. Of course, I have to go and find I've got to go find the piece of prose that they're asking about. But, when I was growing up, I've got memories of physically flying, and I don't mean astral travel. I mean, physically taking my body as a toddler and flying. And I think it might be called something earlier than a toddler. I'd have been about a year and a half old. And I've got memories of physically flying up into the corner. Good morning, Ange. Glad you made it. I've got memories of that. I've got memories of the worst thing that you can really, not necessarily the worst thing you can imagine, but certainly the worst one I went through. Okay. And that is physical molecular disassociation. Literally concentrating on somebody. I got so mad that I've got memories of actually pulling somebody apart. And no, I do not recall how to do that at this point, which is probably a good idea. Thank you so much, Chad. I do appreciate that. Things like those little reminders of, please hit the like button, and the subscribe button, those things are, and we do have the subscribe button down in the corner. Thanks so much to Dave for that one. But so many, I've got these memories of doing things. I remember overriding somebody's or somebody's motor functions. They were a kid when I was in about grade 8. He was walking across the other side of the ballpark of the schoolyard, and I needed to get a hold of him really badly. So all I did was I reached out and concentrated for a moment because he was too far away for even my voice to get to him. And halfway through a stride, he turned and faced me so I could actually wave him down. Do I do that now, in all fairness? No. I think a lot of the problem is as I got older, I know at 5 years old, I ended up crippling myself because of this issue with molecular dissociation. Okay, I pulled this individual apart and I would love to be able to undo it in some ways. But apparently he ticked me off. And the thing is, as I was growing up, this was just plain normal for me. I would do things that did not add up. Like I remember sitting in my crib and all my toys were outside. So of course, when they were all outside, and I'm a little munchkin, I wanted my toys, and Mom was nowhere around. So all I did was I went like this, and all of a sudden I watched these toys come up over the edge of my crib and into my crib with me. Well, Mom come in just in time to see them coming over the top of the crib. And boy, did she get wound up about it. So when Dad come home, he just told Mom that he would take care of it. And that was how I ended up getting involved with the MILABs, with the military laboratories. It was their abuse that ended up developing my ability to the point that it became dangerous. Net result, and again, this is long story short, that put me in this neat little problem of them not being happy with not being able to control me. And I ended up terminated and waking up in the morgue. And rest assured, it takes the doctors a long time after you've died to actually get you to the morgue. Fortunately, no, I did not end up in a drawer. I ended up on a table. Okay, and no, they weren't operating on me. I woke up before that happened. But I'll tell you, it did cause a start for for the people that were there. But now what I'm finding happen with a lot of people is all of a sudden they're starting to notice UFOs. They're starting to what people call predict things happening before they actually occur. And it gets really disconcerting to start with. Okay, like I am not a gambler. And you'd think that I would be in some ways. I've only been into a casino 9 times in my life. 8 times I've walked out with more money than when I walked in. Now you would think this would increase my drive to go into the casino. But I found a way to make certain that when you go in, and it does require a stubborn streak, most of what I do requires something I've got in spades. Okay. And that is stubborn streak. Now, I'm going to show you a book here. Okay. This is a book that I got told point blank by somebody. Okay. Somebody wanted an astrological reading. Okay. And I told them what I told them. JCL, how you doing? This person wanted an astrological reading. And what they did, I said, well, just let me get my book. Now, this is only one of 2 that I've got. As you can see, rather well used. But I told them I needed to get my book. And they said, well, you need a book. Because understand, astrology is done with numbers. Okay. But this book contains a whole pile of them. And that's what I'm going to show you here. They told me, if you have to, good morning, Robert. If you have to get your book, then you're not professional. Well, let me show you something. Okay, that's the numbers I work with. Okay, and every astrologer uses the same type of book. Now, can you picture, I don't expect you to read the numbers. Okay, But you see that list of numbers. That's what she was saying. I had to remember by, I had to know by memory. And if I didn't know them by memory, then I wasn't professional. Well, needless to say, I didn't do the reading. I didn't do the astrological forecast for them. But the more you take a look at the world, okay, the more open to it you are, the better off you are. Now, the more you're going to see. But here's the kicker to it. And it's a very simple concept. The more you know, the less you know. This is something to always keep in mind and to the best of your ability. Okay, and here's why. The more you know, the more you realize is out there. Meaning, comparatively, you actually know less. If you're looking at a pond that is only, if you're looking at a puddle that is only 3 inches wide, and all you can see is that puddle, okay, until you get to the edge of it, and then you can see more. And then all of a sudden you find out that puddle is in a landscape that's an acre wide. Well, now you know there's more out there, but comparatively, you really don't know that much. And this is why I tell people when they say, "Oh, you're an expert." I am no expert, not in my opinion. Am I a specialist? Absolutely, but not a fine specialist. I was talking to somebody the other day, and he wanted to know if I knew anything about reptilians. Okay. And I says, well, let's start with the obvious. I says, you do realize there are at least a dozen reptilian races. Okay. And this does not mean they are cold-blooded. Okay. But what it does mean, actually, I've got to go through that. I should have that ready. I was going to show you something there. The reality of the different races. When I talk about the races, and even when we were talking about Bigfoot a little while ago, okay, these are things I've run into personally. Okay, these are people that I know. As a matter of fact, this will give you an idea. We've mentioned a number of times the Strazazian. Okay, now this is the second book in the Yldrbacian Chronicles. But if you take a look at the guy wearing and carrying the sword, that's the primary character. Okay, that's Jeremiah. This chap here, and you take a look at that mace that he's carrying. This chap right here, that is a Strazazian. Now you can see the size of them comparatively. Now picture, if you will, that size of a mace. Okay, now a mace for a human, if you're not aware of it, a mace is basically a 2 to 3 pound chunk of metal on the end of a stick. Okay, that thing is about the size of a medicine ball, still solid metal. And that's what they use for a handheld weapon. This is why I say, my life is weird. In all fairness, that particular individual, I literally have included him in the books. Now you run into him. That's in the end of an epoch. Okay, and I am now. Well, that one's ready. That one's already in print, as is the first one. And I'm working on, and that's where this little thing comes in. Now, here's the funny thing. Okay, I do my writing hard copy to start with, which is where this is. This is where I'm writing the Return to Paradise. But when you're dealing with your higher senses, and this is where people run into an interesting problem, the more you wake up, the more you're going to recognize and the more you're going to question. Of course, when The Matrix came out, the movie The Matrix, when it came out, people were talking about that, and are we living in a program? No, we're not. Okay, not from anything I've borne witness to. Now understand, my own memories date back to before the construction of Airnav. Okay, construction of Earth. My apologies. We called it Airnav originally. Okay, the Yldrbacian Chronicles I literally titled that. But my memories date back to when the planet was built. Okay. So, yeah, I've got a slightly different outlook on things. Angels are life. Welcome aboard. So, I draw a lot, like with the Yldrbac Chronicles, I actually deal with some of the higher senses and how they come about, how to work with them. But the thing is, these are things that I've personally gone through, that I've personally looked into. Yes, my memories go back a whole lot further than, my memories go back a lot further than most people. Okay, not than all. Some people I'm sure have older memories. I'd love to meet them. Okay, but I keep getting corroboration from people about my own past life memories. But the more aware you become and the more open to it you are, and this is not to say I'm perfectly accurate. Don't just take my word categorically for it. Do your own research. Okay, when I was talking to this gentleman about the reptilians, you've got reptilians that are absolutely aggressive. The one I just showed you they are born knowing honor. They are born with the concept of helping each other. Okay, I talked to somebody just the other day. They had a bunch of memories that they were trying to piece together. And when they laid it out, I went, oh, okay, well, if you're waking up in a hatchery, it's one of these two races in all likelihood. I haven't gone into some of the races yet. But where we're talking about your Drakes, your Tormenon, your Strazazian, and your Kamalian, they all lay eggs. They do not give birth to live infants. Okay, which means they've got hatcheries. Now, when you look at the Chitauri, which is a reptilian race that evolved on Earth, they're another issue altogether. They're the only reptilian race that I know of that has five fingers. Most of them only have 3. But the more your senses awaken, and when you're taking a look at this, okay, when you take your hands and you run that energy that we were talking about earlier, and this is the way to build the energy for yourself. While you're doing that, concentrate on one word, and that one word is heal. Okay. That one word, you run the word heal through your head. Doesn't matter what language. Okay. Your body already knows how to put itself back together. And it only dawned on me, I've been doing this with my own body forever and a day. Okay. When I snapped my arm, when I snapped this one so bad they had to bolt it, it took me 9 days to heal the bone. When I threw my back out, I suffered for a week and a half. And then it dawns on me, it's like, why, pray tell, am I suffering like this? And I went, I can heal this. I don't have to carry on suffering. Okay, so I concentrated for a couple of minutes, right? And literally less than 20, well, I started doing it regularly. And literally less than 24 hours, I was able to move without being in excruciating pain anymore. And bear in mind, when we're talking, Charlene, how you doing? Glad you could join us. The neat part about it is as soon as it dawned on me that, look, I don't have to know what I did wrong. I simply have to realize that by concentrating on that damage, okay, the body will heal itself. Literally less than 24 hours later, I was able to move without being in extreme pain. And today, I'm fine. Okay, the same thing can be done with you. And this is where things got a little screwy on my end. I've been dealing with my teeth collapsing because they literally dissolved because of my acid levels. When I was still married, my now ex-wife, she come out the first summer we were married. She come out, I was working outside. It's 40 degrees above 40 degrees above zero. But we're talking 40 degrees Celsius, meaning it was somewhere close to 110 degrees out. and I'm working outside without my shirt on. Well, she came out, and being newlywed, she gave me a hug. Well, she took first-degree burns like that, right? And from that point forward, it was like, okay, nope, not going to have that happen again. So it's like I had to tell my kids growing up, if I tell you I'm not giving you a hug, that means I'm not wearing a shirt, and I won't do it. No point in giving somebody first-degree burns if you can avoid it. But with the acid level that high, what ended up happening, ultimately, Robert, yes. So what ended up happening is the acid in my system has been dissolving my teeth. Well, it dawned on me about a month ago. Wait a minute. I've been looking for what the teeth are made of. Like man has to know. Humans don't have to know what's wrong with you, but I do caution you. This is done in tandem with doctors. Okay, I don't go to doctors personally, but they can't keep up with my healing rate. Okay, but doctors have a definitive purpose to them. And for most of the people out there, they're great. Okay, I'm just an oddity. And the funny thing is, I would rather have a doctor that was trained in anatomy, and that side of it, repair my arm, than wait for a backyard mechanic. Okay, I know I could have healed it myself, but I would have had a real problem because I needed it in one place. But the more you understand about healing, like when we're talking about feeling, you can feel that energy. The best way to meditate, and this will help you gain a better control over how your energy is running. Okay, and over your body. And that is, you literally feel, you sit there in a comfortable position, not right when you're ready to go to sleep. This idea of trying to meditate as you're going to sleep, it will get you a great night's sleep. It'll put you in the right state of mind, the right state of body. You will go to sleep. You won't do much meditating, but you will go to sleep. But what I found was I sit down and I will concentrate, and you just feel your heartbeat. I'm not talking about putting your hand on your pulse, either the neck or the wrist. I'm talking about just sit there and feel it beat. Once you can feel it beat, track it as far as you can. Okay, if you concentrate, you can feel your pulse in the ends of your fingers. Okay, in my case, I can literally feel my pulse at the end of my hair. Now it's pretty obvious that hair does not have bloodline going, does not have veins going through it. Otherwise, a barbershop would be a real nightmare to go into. But I can concentrate and I can feel my pulse at the end of my hair, which makes it really neat when somebody tries to sneak up on you. Again, you got to be in the right mindset. But by concentrating on that, on that pulse, and again, while you're doing that, while you are doing that, is you literally concentrate again on that word heal. Your body will correct most of the damage. Now, there is stuff that it won't. And the advantage with modern medicine over the naturopathic methods or over the metaphysical methods. Okay, and understand, these are all keyholes to the whole thing. But the advantage of the Western methods is they are fast, they overload the system, whereby they can facilitate the healing a lot faster. Okay, making it, I don't know about you, but I know most people that go into the hospital, if they have a major coronary, like if you take a look at the color of my hair right now, really wonderful color. From my standpoint, I started going gray when I was 16. Okay, but I went into the hospital in 2013. I had a major heart attack that left me the color of my hair. So I didn't mind the doctors asking the first question, because the doctor goes, well, do you know what's going on? And, somebody goes into the hospital there, a neat little gray color. There's something wrong. So I took it as he's just trying to figure out if I'm actually thinking. I says, "Yep, I'm right smack in the middle of a massive coronary." Well, I didn't mind doing that, right? He takes off. He takes a couple of readings and takes off, and turns around. Yeah, gray hair is a sign of lack of oxygen. Yeah, this is what Elaine is saying. Right. Gray hair is a sign of a lack of oxygen, which is an interesting concept, but it belies the question of how I used to be able to swim 100 feet underwater. And I don't mean 100 feet deep. I mean, grab a breath, go underwater 50 feet across, 50 feet or no, I think it was 50 yards across. Seemed like forever in a day, but all the way across the pool underwater, turn around and come back. Okay. I don't know. I don't know the actual dimension. I do know it was an Olympic-sized swimming pool. But my hair was already starting to go gray at that point. But when, from my standpoint, when you're running that word heal, your body will trigger itself and start repairing the damage without you knowing what it is. And the more aware you are of this, the more you're likely to see. Now, I see more out of my peripheral vision than I do out of the front of my eyes. But years ago, number one, I was born colorblind. Okay. But I found a book that actually explained how it all worked. And that triggered the ability for me to put things back together. Like it used to be with glasses, I'd hold them right there, and I could not physically see them. That's no longer the problem. Oh, okay. Yeah, Elaine's just clarifying, not breathing oxygen. Like during a trauma, oxygen in the blood. Okay, yeah. I mean, from my standpoint, trauma just seems to be a normal thing. I've had more heart attacks than most people have birthdays. That's intriguing. Yeah, the difference there for me, my hair was already going gray. Okay, by the time I had the heart attack, of course, I used to have, when I talk about feeling the pulse at the end of my hair, I used to have hair way down to here, all the way down past my elbows. Needless to say, since then I've cut it off. Yeah, I mean, and I haven't looked into that side of it, but there are apparently reports of or like documented cases where people have gone gray overnight. And if gray is a side effect of lack of oxygen flow, that would make absolute, and we're getting corroboration here. The reality is I haven't studied much in the way of medicine. Okay. I took a course in theoretical genetics in grade 8, which was really cute when you think they diagnosed me mentally retarded. Apparently, somebody had a different idea of what mental retardation was. And yes, I absolutely understand. Many people, you say retarded, they take absolute offense to it. And I'm just going to look something up here on the net. Where are we here? Going to take this, that screen up here on my other monitor, so I don't actually block what I'm looking at. And I'm just going to literally call up on the computer what the clinical definition of retarded is. Because so many people, you make one word and then go, you're being rude, you're being disrespectful. Okay. According to the dictionary, according to the Oxford Language Dictionary online, retarded means less advanced in mental, physical, or social development than is usual for one's age. Okay. Now, that is, in my eyes, That is what being retarded in something is. You just haven't got it. It's also known as, thank you very much, Elaine. Elaine has just posted that definition up in the chat room. But to my way of looking at it, if you do not learn, if you don't, for whatever reason, figure it out, okay, you're retarded. You're slower than other people. This does not make you of any less value. I was listening to and this is where the issue of becoming more open-minded. Like, people have asked me how it is I got in touch with so many different races, why I don't have problems with most of them. Well, years ago when I was still married, my ex-wife literally came out and she goes, Keith, you are the only true racist I've ever met. And I looked at her and I says, you want to run that by me again? And she goes, well, think about it. Everybody, pretty much everybody looks at people and goes, you're this color, so you're bad. You're this, you follow this politician, you hope for that, you vote for that sports team. You've got this heritage, you're this gender, or you're this orientation. And they go, these are the things that make you worse. Okay. So, and I says, okay. She goes, but she says, you look at the entire human race, everybody you run into, and go, you've all got the same problem. Now, this does not make me better than anybody. Okay. Matter of fact, I question whether or not I don't get along with people a lot of the time. I don't go out in public much because of the fact that I never could connect with them. But I've always questioned, is it a case of I don't connect with them because I don't understand them or because I do? But the thing is, humans and off-worlders and ancient races, even plants. Like, here's one here for you. Normally, in my life, okay, I tell people, plants are a fabulous thing. They're great people. Okay, this particular one, when I got it, only had 11 little segments on its leaves. Okay, at this point, and I got to take it over to my ex. I still get along with her. At this point, if you look at the little leaves and what have you, it's got over 20 now. Okay, still waiting for him to wake up. Oh, okay. I've been waiting for him to tell me what his name is. I've known he was male for a long time. Right. But I've been telling people I talk to the plants and the animals on a regular basis. And the more open you are, the more aware you are of what's going on, okay, the easier it is to cope. And the trick to it is, yes, you're going to question, is this your imagination? Are you sensing these things? Are you having these flashes of pre-knowledge? Actually, in all fairness, when you take a look at the term clairsentience, it literally means before knowing. Okay. See, angels are life. At 18, you had a few strands. I started at 16. I was a late bloomer because my father started at 14. But what I learned was, by watching people, by accepting people as they are, I stopped separating people. It doesn't matter to me where people stand in life. Okay, I will take a look at them and treat them exactly the same way, even when I'm talking to little kids. You've heard me, like, I was talking to somebody one day and they were asking me about a star drive. Right. And, well, in all fairness, they didn't actually ask me. I was in a chat room listening to a show, and the guy claimed to be claimed to be an expert in alien technology. Now, if you've listened to me on the ET Connection, you'll know people will ask me a question, and sometimes I will pause before I say a word. Okay, well, this guy, he was asked directly by somebody, why is it that people see all the little ships, but nobody ever seems to see the mother ships? And the guy did the wrong thing. I forget what show it was, so we can't even go there. But the guy did the wrong thing. He left absolute dead silence for about 20 seconds. And the radio host also left it dead silent. Okay. And then he finally comes back, and this is a guy that professed to be an expert. Now, to me, if you talk about an expert, you know what you're doing. Well, he comes back and goes, I really don't know. So at that point, I'm sitting in the chat room and I'm going, this person asked a question, they deserve an answer. So I just typed into the chat room. I says, well, once you understand the oscillator densification of the tritrans and spatial equipolarity, it's quite easy to understand, but you do have to take into consideration the fractal inversion in order to slow the system down. Well, long story short, after clarifying that this was a term, I told her, I said, I will explain it to you, but in deference to the show, I won't do it here. Okay. I told them, I told the person, I will not explain it here in the chat room, but PM me. Turned out I was on the horn with him with this person for about an hour and a half to 2 hours because I'm not grounded in Terran technology. So it took me a while to get across what I was doing, what I was trying to explain. And she's going through it. I understand I can follow what you're talking about. Right. And by the end of it, she goes, how much education do you actually have? Right. I says, well, I successfully failed college. I said, why? What's the problem? She says, I've got my master's in both astrophysics and rocketry. And we only just barely touched on the possibility of what you're talking about as though it's common sense. I says, well, from my standpoint, it is. Now, this does not make me an expert. This simply makes me a specialist. I've got a little more knowledge than some people. Okay. Can I translate it into Terran technology? Could I turn around and build an OT drive? No, but I can tell somebody how to build it. What I don't know is how they would how they would build the equipment to sense the particles that they need to collect. Okay. The neat part about it from my standpoint is pretty simple. See, I'm looking at some of these comments back here about the lack of oxygen causing gray hair. Well, I find that fascinating. I'm certain that's the word I was looking for there. Angels are life. The components that have to be picked up, because what it boils down to. Terry, welcome aboard. The particles they're looking at that they're trying to pick up is literally the subquantum shock wave of electrons moving from one molecule to the next. Okay. That's what they've got to be able to capitalize on. And that's where mankind is falling short. They don't have that technology yet. At least not as far as I'm aware. I know last night when I was on the show, there were people that told me, that made the comment that they didn't get a full understanding. Well, I'll tell you guys the same thing I've told a lot of people. Okay. And that is that when if you've got a question and I don't get to answer it, absolutely drop me a line. At the bottom of this video and at the bottom of all of my videos, I put a whole list of things to get in touch with me through. A whole different list of ways to get a hold of me. And absolutely drop me a line, and I will do my best to get back to you. That's one of the things. I've got a few questions that showed up in my email just in the last few days here, possibly as much as a week ago. But my life gets a little screwy. Life gets in the way, as it were. this, I don't wear much in the way of upper class clothing for obvious reasons. Okay, because I really, I was standing in a grocery store lineup one day, and somebody goes, they were complaining about the fact that all I was wearing was a t-shirt. I mean, it was 20 below. I think it was close to 20 below, and I was only going from the car to the grocery store. But I get inside, and this guy's looking at me and going, "How can you dress that like that?" I looked at him and I says, number one, same way you do. I put my clothes on the same way. But I said, the reality of it is, I don't care. I'm not what you would call a fashion statement. Well, the girl in the lineup behind me pipes up and she goes, "You are so. Not a good one, but you are a fashion statement." From my way, from my way of looking at it, it doesn't matter to me what people look like, what they're dressed like. What matters is how people behave and how people treat each other. And the more you understand that, I've been asked so many times by people, how do you go from being an abductee to being a contactee to being a liaison and a consultant? And from my standpoint, it boils down to this. The fact that these people are not human does not matter to me. Okay, they are still corporeal entities. They are still people, even the non-corporeals. Okay, there are some that I will not lay a hand on. Like I've seen when we had the fire back here in Kelowna back in 2003, we had a fire elemental on site. Okay, and you could tell it was fire elemental because of the way it was working. Because of the way it was walking. Never, ever, ever shake the hand of a fire elemental. Of course, they'll tell you the same thing regarding a red hot burner. Don't put your hand on it. It's not fun. So from my standpoint, the more you become aware of your higher senses, people that tell you, and this is a caution. I've talked to people that claim to be energy workers. Okay. And what they end up doing is they go, I've got to put my hand on your body to work on the energy. I'm telling you, no, you don't. Okay. There are healing methods that do require physical contact. But if they're telling you they're a Reiki man, that they're a Reiki master, or they're doing Reiki, or they're doing energy work, you do not need physical contact. That is the whole point, is you don't have to have physical contact. Okay. And yeah, very much angels are life. That is really the case. ETs are just another group of people. They've got the same problems, the same benefits, the same tendencies as many humans. They just happen to have better toys. But if you're dealing with an energy healer and they tell you they have to have physical contact, okay, if that were the case, there is no way I'd have ever gotten into energy work. Because the reality is the two, and I'm going to do this in the politest way I know how, but the two most common areas for people's energy to get jammed is right in the solar plexus, right in their will chakra, or in the groin. Now, if you have to have physical energy and physical contact to break those barriers open, if you have to have physical contact in those locations, can you picture how little work I'd get in that field? I mean, you can get work in other fields, but not in that one. When I'm doing energy work on somebody, I'm usually at least that far apart, that far away from their body. Okay. I remember one young lad, right? Or not one young lad, one young lass that I saw in the hospital one day. I went in there to visit my brother. And I looked at her and she was looking pretty ragged. She was on oxygen and what have you. I'm guessing she was somewhere in her late 80s, early 90s. Have a great weekend there, Bernadette. Thanks for joining us. If you've got questions, absolutely drop me a line. I'll be more than happy to answer them. But I looked at this young lass and I says, can I, I said, you don't look that well. And she goes, well, they said I'll be dead in a couple of weeks. I looked at her and said, really? It says, I'm not a doctor, and I know this is going to sound weird, right? But then I'm not exactly known for being subtle. I says, are you up to kicking your left foot out from underneath the cover? And she goes, yeah. I says, I won't touch it. I'm not even going to get any closer to the bed, right? I just want to see something because I think there's a problem here. So she pops her foot out, and who knows why she put her foot out. But she popped her foot out, and I took one look at the bottom of her left foot, and I went, nope, you'll live for a while. And she goes, but they said I'd be dead in the next couple of weeks. I said, I won't argue with what the doctors told you, but I'm telling you, there's no expiry date. There's no necessary reason for you to go. Well, about a week later, I was back to visit my brother again. And this woman's walking down the hallway with a doctor on either side of her. Well, doctor on one side and I think a nurse on the other. And all of a sudden, she stops and points directly at me and goes, that's the guy that told me I wasn't dying. Right. Of course, the doctors looked at me really funny. It's like, how the heck did you know? From my standpoint, it really boils down to this. If somebody tells you you're dying, if you believe it is wise if a professional, if a doctor comes up and says, look, you're dying, it is wise to get your estate in order. Absolutely. Okay. Angels of Life is asking, why do some abductees become physically ill when they're near an ET base, no matter if it's underwater or underground? The reason being, depending on the reason that may be happening, is when you get abducted, your whole metabolic system goes through a bit of a shock, especially if you're taken off world. But the higher vibratory rate of the energy levels in the UFOs can alter your sensitivity levels, make you a little bit more receptive to them, and thereby, kind of like a walking Geiger counter, you'll know where they are. Okay, you may not be able to pinpoint it, but it's because you're genetically, if you will, sensitized to it. And again, the other thing that you may be finding is your optical nerve may be a little bit more adept at picking up the changes in the energy patterns. Because rest assured, there's a very big difference. And these are things, the more you pay attention to it, the easier it is to spot it. It's like anything, quite frankly. Your higher senses and your ability to work with energy is very much a question of muscle control. And the more you use it, the more you pay attention to it, absolutely look for questions and look for understanding. Talk to somebody that does it. I was talking to a chap one day that he is a very proficient astral traveler. And astral traveling is the ability to get your soul out of your body to go and look around. You leave just enough of a link that the body won't die. And you go around wherever you will. You can go, anywhere in existence, really. But there are limits to what you can deal with. You cannot go to the past and affect the way the past ran. Okay, you can certainly change the way you look at what happened in the past, but you can't actually alter it. Okay, and I looked at this guy and I said, I want to show you something really trippy. Because we were talking about his other half, doing their best to get into, trying to get into the idea of astral travel. I said, let me show you something. I said, you're not proficient at it. But I turned to her husband. I said, you get out of your body easy, right? And he goes, yeah. I said, great, watch this. And I concentrated for half a second. And I says, get out of your body. And he, all of a sudden, he turned a really neat shade of green. You could tell it upset his stomach. And he looks at me and he says, I just cannot. He says, how did you do that? I can't get out of my body. I says, astral travel is like anything else. There are tricks to it. Okay. Here we go. I'm just reading something here that Elaine has just posted. What she has said is, in just the past 5 years, I can communicate with animals, and don't laugh me off here, but I touch certain trees. They show me their memories. Elaine, there is no reason on the planet in existence, from my standpoint, to laugh you off. This is actually a really enjoyable thing. I actually showed a girlfriend of mine years ago how to listen to the trees drink. Okay. My own sons did not believe I could talk to the animals until just about 3 years ago, when I had a conversation with a couple of, Charlene has she's just mentioned, I wish I could do that. Okay. Ultimately, you do have a block in your mind, Charlene. Okay, and the block is this. You've been told since you were tiny, it's not possible to talk to animals. It's not possible to talk to trees. Well, I'm telling you, the word impossible is highly overstated. Well, yeah, we got to understand something, Elaine. It's not a question of, and it's not Elaine, just Elaine, but the rest of you as well. Speech is not a question. Communication is not always done in what humans call speech, but it is still a way of talking. Okay. And what happens is we're taught from the time we're tiny, it's not possible. It's impossible to talk to animals. Okay. The movie way back in the 60s called Dr. Dolittle, right, made a real good show of it. That this one guy could, and he was always laughed at about it as well. Even when I was married, I talked to, we had a couple of dogs that were being noisy, and we just could not get them to be quiet. And I finally turned around, I looked at the two of them, and I growled at them. And the two of them just clammed right up. Well, my wife at the time looks at me and goes, when you're talking to the dogs, would you at least speak English? I looked at her and I said, why? They don't. Talking to the animals, talking to the plants, even talking to the stones. Okay, that's how communication works. Elaine, I don't know if you're aware of this, but what you're talking about in metaphysical fields is referred to as psychometry. Okay, you're picking up the psychic footprint of what's been going on around them. Okay. See, the problem is, as kids, we do this all the time. But as we get older, adults tell us, that's not possible. That's a wonderful imagination, Munchkin. Now, grow up. Okay. Now, that's convenient. That's so much better than shooting it. Elaine's just saying that in the chat room here that when she was younger, they had a cougar attacking their horses. And she goes out and she just simply communicated with it to leave them alone. And the thing did. Now, I will tell you, it's a great gift. Okay. It is absolutely a great gift. But we have to use common sense. If there is a cougar in the area, do not try and talk to the thing while you're within range. This is just not wise. And up here in Canada, the last thing you want to do is try and talk, shall we say, common decency to a wolverine, because they are one of the most vicious animals available. One of the biggest problems that I found growing up was people always thought I was completely off my kilter. I was completely nuts. Even my parents, and they both apologized for it before they died. But even they tried to convince me I was completely nuts, to the point that I ended up going to a shrink, to a psychiatrist, at which point he probably confirmed, no, you're not nuts. You've just got a very weird setup. It's just a suggestion, Elaine, and this is for you and for anybody that's listening. Do not bother trying to convince people. People are not, on the whole, they're not willing to look at the abnormalities. Okay. This shirt that I'm wearing here, okay, this, it says chaotic good, obviously, and that's a 20-sided die. That's why, because I'm a role player, okay, I play Dungeons and Dragons. People are not even willing, many people, especially back then, where you tell people you play Dungeons and Dragons, people assumed automatically we were involved in witchcraft. We were involved in all these terrible things. And then we actually went down. We actually went down into the sewers to learn how to cast spells. Right. Well, the reality is, have I looked into witchcraft? Certainly. I've spent 2 lifetimes as a witch. Okay, the first one I tried out the idea of let's be the witch, and that resulted in a barbecue that I was invited to. Not a fun trip. So the next lifetime I came back, I became a warlock, as in a witch that worked for the government, finding other witches. Now, don't take that the wrong way. Okay, that's a bad thing in a lot of ways, but I found a way to work with it. Because most of the witches were midwives, they were just natural herbalists, they were healers. Now, you've done the right thing there. Elaine lives way out in a great big ranch in the middle of Texas, out in the middle of nowhere. See, and I thought I was bad. You've been reclusive for 30 years. I've been reclusive for about 10. I'm starting to get back out to talk to people because I've been told point blank, that's what I've got to do. So I mean, when I what I did when I was working as a warlock, most witches were simply healers. They were herbalists. They were interested in taking care of people. The midwives, this sort of thing. The church didn't like it. So what I do when I went to work for the church, and bear in mind, I was a practicing witch at that point. Actually, in all fairness, I really wasn't practicing. I was rather well developed on that one. But I go out and I do the normal questioning and watch what they were doing. If the person that was accused was a problem, if they were deliberately hurting people, or they were working against the laws of nature, then I absolutely would deal with them in the way the church had decreed. Yes, that's a witch. We've got to deal with it. Okay. But that was if they were a problem. If it turned out they were decent people, oh, she's just a quiet herbalist, she's not doing anything wrong, right? I would turn around and go, no, I've done my examination, she is not a witch, right? But the person that accused her most assuredly is. Okay, so I would find that person that accused the herbalist or the midwife of being a witch. I would investigate and come to the conclusion they were a witch. They would be taken out of the equation. Now, the thing with the witch hunts is when a person that was living on a property was convicted of witchcraft, their property was taken, and then it would be put up for sale or auctioned off. If the government itself didn't want it, they'd auction it off for sale, which meant it would go at an absolute steal. So from my standpoint, I turned around, I turned around, I buy the property, and then I move witches as I found the positive ones. I move them onto my properties. That is fantastic, Elaine. Elaine just said that and has just announced that she is one of the leading horse trainers in the world. And it's because she communicates with the horses. Our newest stallion, we have almost $100,000 won money on him now. That is fantastic, Elaine. Here's one you're going to love. I had a client call me years ago. They had bought a Triple Crown bloodline colt, and the thing would run like the wind. During practice, it would run like the wind. Well, what would happen is they get him down to a race. The gun would go off, the gates would drop, and he'd stand there, and he'd walk out. Look around. Everybody else is racing down the road, down the track. So she phones me up and she goes, "What, pray tell?" That's not the problem, Elaine. But this horse would take off around the corner, like it would stand there looking while the rest of the horses left. So the owner looking and calls me up and goes, "What is wrong? Why won't he run in a race?" And I said, "Well, because you're not treating him like a member of the family. He wants to eat with the family." And she goes, "But I can't. We inside." I said, "You can." I said, "You've got a door you've got a window, and right underneath the window in the kitchen is a pot sink. Go and get hay and put it in the pot sink and let him eat out of the pot sink." Right. I mean, obviously you don't want him in the house, but let him eat out of the pot sink. Well, she did that because nothing else had worked. She turns around and did that. In the following race, the gun goes off and the horse was around the first corner before the rest of the horses got halfway down the first run, halfway down the first lane. I'm just looking back here to see what Elaine has done. Yeah, unfortunately, Elaine, I used to have a sticker, a bumper sticker that said, "The more people I meet, the more I like my cats." I get along with people so much better than I do with animals so much better than people. Like at the beginning of this show, I mentioned that there was a squirrel outside. Well, what he did was he was running by, and I think it was a peach pit. It couldn't have been a peach pit. Oh no, there are nuts around here anyway. But he's running by, and he all of a sudden stops, and he sits up on his hind legs, and turns to look at me in the window, and he's literally showing me this nut that he's got. And so I just looked at him, and it's like, well, way to go, and he'd run off. And this happens regularly from my standpoint. The neat thing about working with the higher senses is the more you get used to working with them, the more adept you are at it, if you will, the quicker it's going to happen and the easier, the more you're going to see. But the one thing I do caution you is don't make the mistake of trying to explain it. I mean, certainly if people are open to explain to listening, like people have asked me and I figured, okay, I might just well bring that up. If people are open to listening to it, then absolutely do your best to explain it. But as I heard it put one day, I can explain it to you. I cannot understand it for you. Okay. But the higher senses, as they come online, they can be a little disconcerting because they will defy everything you've been taught in most cases. I mean, even people that have known me for years will say the same thing. It's like, we don't get how you pull that off. I'm like, this is just life for me. But, the one thing I will tell everybody is, if you ever do end up in Kelowna, BC, which is where I am I willing to meet and sit down with somebody for coffee? Absolutely. I will meet people for coffee, but the real kicker to it is, there's only one restaurant in the city I go to. Okay, that's the only one I go to. So with that in mind, yeah, I'll go for coffee. On the plus side, I go to a restaurant it is a licensed restaurant. Okay. So if you're into that sort of thing, I'm not. I used to drink a 26er a night. I quit. And that is the whole thing, Ange. Animals absolutely love unconditionally. You know where they stand. There is no hidden agendas. They either like you or they don't. I had a raccoon come to my apartment one day. The mother was sitting over on the corner, right? And the little kid, he walks over and he looks up at me and he stands up on his two hind legs and puts his hands up like this, right? And I'm like, no, I am not picking you up. I know better than that, right? But I did talk to him for a few minutes. And, picture, if you will, a raccoon looking a little dejected when I told him I wasn't going to. Well, no, Elaine. I'm the last person to tell somebody that they're nuts. I remember I went into a psych ward one day, and I'm in there talking to somebody. And bear in mind, the psychiatrist was in the room, and I went in to visit a friend of mine. But I got talking to this young lass, and she's telling me why she was in there. And I looked at her and I says, there's only one difference between you and I, aside from the fact that you're female. There's only one thing setting us apart. She goes, yeah, I'm in here and you're not. I says, yeah, very much. But I said, the reason I'm not in here is I knew the answers they were looking for. Yeah, and it's Terry, it's people like your ex-wife. Well, I don't know if she was your wife, but your ex. It's people like her that I used to run into when I was a warlock. With people like her that I would take out of the area and put them someplace safe. Right. And of course, because I was working for the government, nobody would come onto my property looking to see if I was hiding witches, because I kept burning the things. Of course, the reality is I was burning people that were either problems or they were witches that were causing a problem to Gaia herself. And here's a neat little trick for all of you. Okay, that healing energy I was talking about. Okay, when you put your hands together, get your energy set aside, and I can't really show you because, well, I don't have enough hands. But you get the energy moved aside. You get the energy built so your hands are about that far apart. You can put them on either side of a plant and purify you can knock the toxins out of the soil. This is the same thing that was done 2,000 years ago. The whole concept of changing water to wine. Red wine, the red wine aspect was Hollywood. Okay, but the funny thing there is Hollywood had to do it because white wine and white water just didn't work well. Speaking of water, really funny sidetrack. I'm looking, there was an ad that came up, and I have not figured out how this can happen. Oh, okay, I'll get to that in just 10 seconds, Lane. I have no idea how you could pull this off, but somebody is now selling, of all things. Now, I get the idea of diet pop, diet ice cream, what have you. Somebody is now selling diet water. Now, if anybody's got any idea how you could make diet water, I'd love to know how you do that. Okay, unless they're adding something to it to force you to drop weight. Okay, Elaine is asking, she goes, need explanation, please. Keep having this dream where a mother cougar comes in my backyard, drops a cub at my feet, looks at me, turns and leaves. What that is, Elaine, is number one, you look at the fact that you're dealing with a cougar. Now, felines are naturally more adept at connecting with the psychic phenomenon of humans. Okay. But bearing in mind your past history, where it comes to dealing with the cougar, that you have to leave the horses alone without shooting at it, without hurting it, what you're being shown is that the cougar, that Gaia has figured out that you are a natural healer. You will take care of her kids. Okay. And what that dream was to tell you, what that dream was to tell you, just right up front, I know you'll take care of my kids. When you find them, please do what you can for them. Ultimately, that's what it boiled down to. It's not like you needed a request, because frankly, you'd have done the same. You'd have done it anyway. Okay. Yes, you'll get water as soon as I get done. Wonder how well you'd like that. I used to have, I showed you this plant earlier. It's still sitting here. I had as a matter of fact, I should do that and see what happens. I had a plant, a croton. The first time I heard it, it was funny. I'm sitting there, I'm pouring myself a cup of coffee. And now bear in mind, my coffee is extremely weak. And I'm walking by and I get this, hey, where's mine? And I'm looking around, it's like, first of all, who are you and where are we looking? So he calls my name again. And I finally pinned down who he was. I looked at him and he says, you're looking for coffee? He goes, yeah, where's my coffee? I said, oh. I said, no problem. So I got him a little coffee. I'll tell you, you can absolutely see the relief when I gave him his coffee. Okay. And I would get almost every time I had coffee, he'd want some. And it just became a standing rule, okay, you want your coffee, no problem. The unfortunate part is when I had the stroke, Gordon ended up dying. Nice, Elaine. Yeah, and that's what this whole thing about the cougar, about the dream and the cougar is Gaia. Itza is what I learned. That's what she told me her name is. I used to refer to her as Gaia as well. But before I started writing the Yldrbac Chronicles, Itza came to me and she literally told me my name is Itza. Okay, I can work with it. Okay, she is actually a Kaboran. Okay, the entity that we live upon is a Kaboran. And all of her children, the animals, the plants, the minerals that she's made up of, are all, they are all absolutely poetically mistaken. Welcome aboard. Glad you could join us. They are all her kids. But she flat out told me that her name, that she told me her name, and what she's telling you, Elaine, and anybody else that has the same sort of a situation, is Itza does know who her supporters are. Okay. And like I've written poems about this sort of thing before. Right. And I am in the process of putting an anthology together to get them published. Amongst other books that I've got up and running. That I'm in the process of putting together. A friend of mine ended up befriending a grizzly bear cub when it was literally just a cub. And for the next 20 years, every time he went out in the woods, this grizzly bear would come up and walk with him. Right. These are just normal things. But the more aware you are of your senses, and the more you are aware you are, Elaine, I think I might be able to relate. Although, in all fairness, I didn't do a whole lot of crying. But I sure became reclusive and became completely withdrawn. But the reason I didn't do a lot of crying was the acid in my skin, in my tears, is so high that I literally will burn my face. I'm personally not happy with the added pain. I was lucky when I was in elementary school. Some of you may know of a chap by the name of Farley Mowat. Okay, I was lucky. He came to our school with his purebred wolf, and I'll tell you, a timber wolf is one massive puppy dog. Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, I mean, the funny thing about coyotes is they're crazy as a, you know, as a chicken coop rat. They really are. You know, them and hyenas both are just absolutely bonkers. I'm sure of it. You know, the other one that I had the pleasure of actually meeting, I'm walking down the street in city here about 25, 30 years ago. Right. You know, I was walking down the street in town here about 20 years ago, and I walked by this house, and you know, I looked at the window, and here's what I thought was a stuffed animal. Beautiful thing, right? Stretched out across the back of this couch. And the sign on it, you know, the sign on the couch on the door was "Forget the dog. The Black Panther ate it." So I'm looking at this, and then all of a sudden, this cat sits up. Right, I'm looking at it. Well, it just so happened the owner was home, and the owner come out and he says, "Would you like to meet him?" I says, absolutely." I said, "How am I going to turn an offer like that down?" Well, I'll tell you, if you think a cat has a low rumble when they purr, you have not felt anything until you feel the rumble of a panther. You know, so I mean, you know, when we're looking at animals, these are things that you can do as your higher senses kick in. Now, by the way, the trick to talking to coyotes. First rule of thumb, Elaine, and this goes to everybody. When I was growing up, I was taught we recited a poem every week, every single week in church for 13 years. And that poem, the one line I remembered out of it was, "Can't is a word that is foe to ambition." Take that word can't, and throw it right out of your vocabulary. The thing with coyotes is, first of all, if you can you can communicate with bears, you can communicate with dogs, they are still canines. Okay, they still speak the same base language. Okay, and what you do is tell yourself, "I can talk to coyotes." But the trick with talking to a coyote, as with a hyena, is they respect strength, and they respect strength. They respect what's the word I'm looking for? Confidence. Okay, that's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, probably not. You know, thing you have to remember with all of Esau's children is they are animals. They are not civilized by human standards. Of course, they understand more of Esau's ways because they understand the cycle of life. And you know, the reality is, yeah, I feel for you. I've had lots of pets over my life. Right. And you always take care of them. I mean, realistically, pets, from my standpoint, are simply put fuzzy. They're simply called fuzzy kids. You know, Yeah, well, that's what this thing is, and I know you know this, angels are life, but this one here, okay, and this is what I was saying is I finally found out what his name is. Meet Christoph, okay, but he only had 11 segments when I got him. He's now got over 20. So for the first time ever, I'm managing to get this plant to grow, but I've got to take it over to the X because it's better for her to transplant it than it is for me. I've killed too many plants. I'd like to keep this one alive. Yeah. Had a similar situation with that, Elaine. My dad told me that the one thing that worried him was I've got no fear of the metaphysical field. None at all. I used to be terrified of horses. Never could figure out why, but I got it sorted around. I now can actually deal with them. But it was only until, well, we're in 02 now, we're in 22 now, which would be 6 years ago, 8 years ago now, that I finally was able to be around a horse at all. It used to be a horse got within 15 feet of me, even if I didn't see it coming. My hands would start to shake so bad I couldn't hold a cup of coffee. And let's face it, that's a terrible thing. If you're drinking the amount of coffee I drink and you can't hold a cup, there's a problem. Elaine, don't work too terribly hard, but do your best to enjoy yourself. Say hi to the kids, if you would please. And there are these sorts of things that you have to deal with. One of the nice things about the way that the world works is the more in tune with it you are. And I find this with people in all walks. I've talked to a lot of people that have claimed to deal directly with off-worlders. They work with them face to face on a regular basis. I'm guessing, Charlene, this means you were probably kicked. Or not kicked, but thrown. And that'll do it for you. Yeah. I don't know what you guys are paying. I mean, understand where our dollar value, and this does make sense, is lower than yours is. But I wait for mine to come on local price. I wait for mine to come on at $6 or $7 a kilo. And then I'll buy 3 or 4 tins of it, in order to have it. Oh, heavens, yeah. Every animal, every plant, every rock has its own personality. Okay, and what you will find, and test this out for yourself. Again, this is an exercise that you work with to get your own strength up, because the stronger your ability to sense is, the more refined it becomes, the easier it is to work with your higher senses. But take your hand, and like I always look at it this way, you work with the palm of your hand because it's got the most, that's where your primary chakra is, on the hand. You have smaller chakras, which are just as important, on the fingertips. Okay. And you take your hand, you put it over something, and again, you keep it about that far away. Okay. You keep it about the 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch away, and just put your hand down over it, and you'll be able to feel it a lot more readily. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Charlene, the thing is, if you're in pain, and especially if riding a horse is going to aggravate said pain, it's not like you're going to go running off. I probably would have worked harder to get past the fear of horses if it were a necessity for me to actually do so. Yeah. And, angels of life, that's the thing. I've been told this often and often. And it's the same as riding a bike. You drop a bike, whether it's bicycle or motorcycle. The saying is, get back on the horse. The reason is exactly that issue, is to make sure that you know that you yourself can still do it. You know, from my standpoint, I nearly got killed on the road one day, driving in the middle of the winter. I never did get my ability to drive back. I mean, I can still drive, but I don't drive in the winter much. I don't drive in the mountains at all anymore. And I don't even drive at night anymore because my confidence in driving collapsed. But I nearly got backed over by 3 semis in the middle of a snowstorm. Not a fun job. Okay, but since then, and I talked to my dad, I said, you know, will I ever get it back? He says, you may never get your ability back. He says, what you went through may have just ruined it. Poetically Mistaken is asking, what are your feelings about using crystal and mineral jewelry to assist in healthy chakra development? Absolutely do it. The only caution around crystals is if you've got a quartz crystal. Okay, actually, here's one here. And I keep it boxed and out of the way. But, oh, look at that. I forgot I had money. You know, anyway, this little gem, okay, if you've got a quartz crystal, now this one's smoky quartz. This is a healing crystal, okay, but if you've got a clear quartz crystal, do not put it near your computer, especially if you're working with it, because quartz crystals are amplifiers. Okay, and being an amplifier, they can short a computer out. Now, the best computers I've ever seen are built with actual crystals. I've actually got, I haven't built it, and I haven't gone and found the crystals that I require. But I've seen a computer that was built with straight crystals and mud. Okay, the mud was what was used, mud, clay, call it what you will. They made a dome, right? Basically, take a bowl, turn it upside down. There's your base. Okay. And they inserted 12 very specific crystals into it. A beautiful energy conduit. But crystals work beautifully for, as a matter of fact, you know, thank you for bringing that to my attention again. It's been happening way too often. But crystals, when it comes to working with energy, is absolutely necessary. See, the neat part about it is when you're working with crystals, you know, I wonder if I can see the book. And of course, it's gone missing. Oh, there it is. This is the one I rely on. This is one of those books. Where are we here? This one here. If you're looking for a book that is really good, that I find really good, is this book here. Okay. That's the one I use for my reference. Now, of course, the thing with crystals is they will tell you exactly what they're doing. But in case you didn't catch that, that is Love is in the Earth. Okay. It's a kaleidoscope of crystals updated. This one's the updated version. This one does not have pictures, but there is a copy of this out that has pictures of what the crystals look like. Okay. But the crystals, when you listen to them, every stone, like people talk about crystals, but what people don't realize is every single stone has qualities, has healing capacity. You know, when we talk about the Garden of Eden and everything working together, you know, that neat little stone that people see all over the place, most of it is sleeping. It's called granite. It is a better grounding material. You know, it is a much easier material to ground with, to bleed off excess energy with, than virtually any other one. Now, hematite itself In my opinion, yeah. Poetically mistaken was just saying it looks like it's worth it, and like it's worth its weight. Well, yeah, it is. And I mean, when we take a look at this particular book, it is just looking for the end. Before it gets to the index, it is 709 pages, jam-packed with information on the different gems, the different crystals. And in all fairness, making jewelry out of them where you can wear it is great. I was going to show you something here. This is the other one. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you should mention that there, Charlene. I just showed you this one. This is that healing. This is the healing. That is a healing crystal. That, combined with this little neat piece, there is a piece of moldavite. Okay. Those two, that was half the reason I wasn't using a cane, I'm sure of it. Don't know why I stopped doing it, other than all sorts of things went sideways. But I used to walk around with these two crystals in my pocket. Had virtually no problem with my legs. As you just said, moldavite is direct from the stars. It is the only gem quality stone from off-world that mankind has some access to, and it's very hard to come by. Neat thing with that, poetically mistaken, citrine is one of those gems that it's one of those stones that actually helps draw prosperity. Speaking of which, I should go and get that other thing. Anyway, not something here, just while I'm out and about. I've been meaning to pick one up for a long time. Some of the things that work really well for drawing prosperity to you. Okay. Citrine or malachite. And I'm not wearing my ring. Malachite itself is another stone that works really well to draw finances and physical prosperity to you. No, in all fairness, Angels of Life, I have never broken a stone that I'm aware of. Okay, not by wearing it. Now, phones, computers, electronics in general, I can absolutely cook. But crystals I get along with really well. Yeah, malachite. I've got a four-sided pyramid of malachite down back. I also have a ring of malachite in sterling silver. But I absolutely, where it comes to jewelry, absolutely the natural stuff, in my opinion, is far better. Of course, you don't want to take a rock this size and put that on a ring. Unless you really like gaudy rings. I'm just looking at the way this one's cut. It would actually work not bad as a sundial. Except for the fact that you actually require sun. You don't get much of that inside an apartment. Angels of Life. Do you have any idea how to effectively ground yourself? Because one is causing the problem is you're running the energy too quickly through it. You got to remember, energy runs through the gems much like water does. Okay, and if you run the energy too fast, you'll split the gem. Now, I knew a kid when I was in the my labs that could fracture ceramic cups. He would simply do the same idea. He'd put his hands around it, and he would concentrate, and he would fracture first of all the finish on them, and then the cup itself. They would have to shatter from the inside out. What's happening is you're running so much energy through them, you're increasing the vibratory rate inside their superstructure. Net result, they're shattering. Okay, but if before dealing with them, now presumably you're wearing a lot of these, the one that you'll likely not shatter because of the way it's designed is carry a piece of hematite with you. And at the end of the, what are we at here? The best way that I've come across for grounding poetically mistaken, the best way I've come across. Lodestone works like a charm and basically boils down to a battery. Something you want to do with the lodestone though is once every 3 or 4 days or once a week at the latest, take it and set the lodestone in a bucket of water. Do not drink the water. Set it in the water even in a glass of water, depending on the size of your lodestone. It simply requires being covered in the water. I'd recommend an ice cream bucket. Leave it sit there for 6 or 8 hours so they can just bleed off. Okay, and it will drain the negative energy out of it peaceably, quietly, and then you pour the water down there. You pour the water into the ground. You don't even have to pour it into the drain. Pour it in onto the grass. The grass will love you for it. Okay, it's not negative energy that you're draining off, by the way. It is simply an excess of energy. That will make it more effective. Where it comes to other methods, one of the best tricks I ever found was when you're sitting on something, when you've got them, or when you're feeling a little overwhelmed, you take your hand, right or left, it doesn't matter. You place it palm down on something solid that usually sits on the ground. Okay, be it a table, like a heavy table, a heavy chair that's not easy to pick up, like a recliner. Okay, even the side of the wall, the floor itself, you put your hand against it and visualize the excess energy coming out of your hand, much like water out of a faucet. This will bleed off that excess energy and may well protect a lot of the things around you. But yes, in answer to that unspoken question here, these are all tools that I've learned, that I've brought back to my attention. The other thing that you'll find for clearing the negative energy out of your body, and virtually everybody has these. You take a bathtub, fill it with as warm a water as you're comfortable sitting in. You add 4 teaspoons of baking soda and 4 teaspoons of salt. Regular salt works fine, but sea salt is better. Absolutely not Epsom salt, but just the 4 teaspoons of the salt and the baking soda and nothing else. No bubble bath, no essential oils, just the water, the salt, and the soda. And then you sit in and soak for 20 minutes to half an hour. It is the best physical energy cleanser I've come across this lifetime. If you don't have a bathtub, the second option is to get a bucket to soak your feet in. Same concept. You still take that teaspoon of salt and the 4 teaspoons of salt. Well, in a crock pot, you can probably, not crock pot, but in a roaster. Okay, one big enough to put both your feet in. You could quite easily do it with one teaspoon of baking soda and 1 teaspoon of salt. You're dealing with a lot less water. Okay. And again, you sit there and you soak for 15, 20 minutes. Okay. In all fairness, if you can sit there for an hour, you're better off because you're trying to draw you're drawing the energy out of your body and putting it back in, the excess energy out of your body into the water. Then you pour the water on the ground. Eats all will love it. Basically, all you're doing is recycling the energy for it. In all fairness, poetically mistaken, I have no idea whether it makes the water alkaline or not. What I do know is it's got too much energy to put back into your system The idea is real simple. If you're draining it out of your system, drinking it again is not a really good idea. These are all different things that I've been working with. And like I said, I've been doing this since I was a kid. My dad used to say the biggest concern he had with me was I've got no fear of the metaphysical world. I've got no fear to speak of. I used to have a lot of fear of some alien races. The Talons, which are the ant folk, I don't get along with. They are a brutal race, and in my experience, they've never been nice to me. So I just don't deal with them a whole lot. And if I do, they deal with me on my terms. Primarily because they've got this attitude that, they're allowed to do whatever they will. When you look at the vegans do things that, you can understand why they do what they do. Because they've got no pain center at all. So they don't understand the necessity for anesthetic. They don't understand this concept of how somebody can lose a limb and that can kill them. And yet most of the races, you take a limb off, they'll bleed to death. Okay, with the vegans, you take a limb off, and the only thing they notice is they no longer have that side and that arm to work with. Yeah, that would do an angel around our life. I mean, in my case, I seldom take a bath. And don't take that the wrong way. I use a shower. Of course, that may be partially because of the fact when I was about 11 or 12 years old, I drowned. Maybe a little older than that. And once I drowned, I lost all interest in getting into bodies of water. I can sit and watch water for hours, and the rain certainly doesn't bother me. But no, when you're looking at the way, the more aware you are of how energy works and how it transfers, because when you think about it, we're taught that change is a frightening thing. It's difficult, but you got to remember, you've been sitting here, the bunch of you have been sitting here for at least the last hour, probably more than that at this point. Okay, you've been sitting here. Every time somebody says something, every time you turn your head and you see something, you're changing. Okay, the world is changing for you. Absolutely. Negative energy can be annoying as heck, but you have to have, we were all given free will. We talk about negative and positive energy. There's actually 3 types of energy. And this was something Einstein actually tried conveying to the scientists of his time. Okay, there's 3 types of energy. You've got positive, negative, and neutral. Okay, and they all are required. Creation was built on 3s. Okay, people talk about the pyramid schemes and what have you, that they're illegal because of the fact that they're pyramid. Well, everything in existence is built on 3s. Okay, and here's a really cute one for you. Now, the theory of relativity. Okay, most people have come to believe it boils down to E equals mc squared. Also known as energy equals mass times acceleration, which the formula is absolutely on the money, but it's got nothing to do with the theory of relativity. Now try and wrap your brain around this one. The theory of relativity that Einstein was trying to pass on was 1 plus 1 equals 3, but it is not a mathematical equation. And that's where the local scientists seem to have had a hang up. I don't know if that's what the problem was. But 1 plus 1 equals 3 explains reality perfectly. Okay, because you have 2 opinions just on a simple term. you've got two opinions, and 9 times out of 10, the truth is somewhere between those two. One opinion, two opinion. The third one is the truth. Okay. Or it boils down to this. One opinion, one end, the other end, and then everything in the middle. Okay. This is why, according to mathematics, you can never get anywhere in life. You can never reach your physical destination. Because every time everything can be cut down to a halfway mark. Oh, Charlene, now understand, I'm not a nutritionist. But what Charlene is asking is, I'm really conflicted about diet. Is it more spiritual or better mentally to go vegan? I'm doing mostly carnivore, and I do feel my body is healing. A lot of people say they can't grow eating animals. Well, here's the thing. Now, I'm virtually solidly carnivore. Okay, my idea of a normal meal is you take whatever meat is available, whether it's fresh meat, like I don't cook them very much. So a lot of it is processed or somebody else deals with it. But the human genome is an omnivorous animal. It requires meat, and it requires specifically red meat to function properly. Okay, now I work in the metaphysical field. I work as a consultant for many different races and for many different businesses. Okay, meat itself, the consumption of meat is not a spiritual hindrance. Okay. I get a kick out of it. I was talking to one chap that looks at it and goes, he says, I eat my vegetables. I eat cows. And cows, well, they eat grass. So they eat the grass. I eat the cows. Thereby, I eat the grass. Well, a carnivorous diet does not make you less spiritual. It doesn't make you less able to work in the metaphysical field or even to live in a spiritual path. I was talking to one person, it was brilliant. They said, I think hunting should be absolutely banned. So that people should go to grocery stores only and get their meat where no animals are killed. Which, when you think about it, is pretty accurate. Because if you go to a grocery store to buy your meat, the animals are not killed in the grocery store. But no, contrary to this wonderful concept that's out and about right now, meat is not the diet of a lower vibrational individual. You can be just as spiritual, just as enlightened as a person that sticks to just grains and fruits. Okay. But the reality is the human genome is built. It literally is an omnivorous engine. It requires red meat, fruits, vegetables. I don't know what the difference is between vegetables and legumes. I call it fruits, meat, fruit, and vegetables. Okay, and it's that simple. But is there a problem with staying with your basically carnivorous diet? No. Quite honestly, poetically mistaken, I agree with you there. Math itself is being, it is being, a lot of the terms are misused. A lot of the terms in the English language are misused. Okay. You're more than welcome, Charlene. I'm glad it helps because there is nothing wrong. I mean, the only time to tell your diet is off is if you're feeling sluggish. Okay, if you're feeling weighed down and not responsive, then you may have to adjust your diet. Okay, it's kind of like if you're feeling constipated while prune juice works. Okay, by the way, so does X-Lax, and apparently it tastes better than prune juice. Personally, I don't use either. But, the reality is, it said very clearly where it says everything in moderation. Okay. Meaning you can have, there's nothing wrong with drinking, with eating meat, with eating fruit and vegetables. There's nothing wrong with, with some of the natural drugs. I mean, understand, these geniuses out there that tell you if it's natural, it's good for you, have never had a cup of arsenic. Now, arsenic is absolutely a natural drug. It's also a natural toxin. Okay. Just because it's natural does not make it bad for you. And just because it's man-made does not make it a bad thing. Okay. But everything, including, things like that we all know are dangerous in great quantities. Alcohol, once in a while, is not a bad thing. I've read or talked to people on occasion that have mentioned that a glass of wine. Now, bear in mind, we are talking a 3 to 4 ounce glass of wine is actually good for your system. Now, I don't know. I used to drink wine. I used to drink everything that I could get my hands on. But I'll tell you, the best wine I ever tasted was Black Tower wine. Comes in an old black medieval style bottle, or at least it used to. I don't even know if you can get it anymore. But that is the wine, I will tell you, the bottle, the wine at the top of the first bottle is not great. But the wine at the bottom of the fourth bottle is some smooth. But again, everything in moderation. There are people that live by the metaphysical world, that live by astrology. And I will tell you, there are flaws in astrology, and I will get to those on a different day because I'm just about out of time here. There are flaws in just about everything. Nothing on this planet that I've run into is absolutely perfect. Lord knows I'm not. I was told years ago that I really had to learn tact. And I looked at the person, I went, tact. Why? And she goes, the woman that brought it to my attention, really good friend of mine, she goes, tact, the ability to tell people to go, to go to hell and look forward to the trip. I says, I have one problem with that philosophy. If I'm mad enough to tell somebody to go to hell, why do I care whether they're looking forward to the trip? Now, I will tell you this. You really should look forward to the trip to hell. And I am talking the biblical hell. Personally, I find the hot tubs they've got there are a little warm for my liking. But the place is an absolute riot to go to. This is one of the reasons I don't fear death at all. That and the fact I've done it more often than I care to count. But we are coming to the end of today. Well, we're coming to the end of the broadcast anyway. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me. And I will be sometime later this afternoon. I'm hoping to record the journey. I've just got a lot of things I gotta get done and post that. This will go up right away. But thank you so much for joining me. If you'd like, and thanks for the great questions. Absolutely leave your comments below. If you want to get in touch with me directly, there's a whole list of ways of getting a hold of me. Okay. There's also a list of different books I've already written that you can order directly through me. So I will be back again next Saturday to go live again at 8 a.m. And thank you again so much. I do appreciate you being here. So this is, until we meet again, take care of yourselves and each other. And for pity's sakes, stay positive.